is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to this special episode of KCSN Update. DJ Kissel hanging out with ESPN's Matt Miller to break down a little bit of your thoughts, Matt, on the Chiefs-Bills, and obviously talk about the marquee matchup this weekend in the AFC with the Chiefs and the Ravens meeting for the AFC Championship Game. We've been talking about it all week. The sixth straight AFC title game for Patrick Mahomes and company. Matt, first of all, thank you for joining us. I know this is getting into your busy season with the NFL Draft stuff all kind of kicking into high gear right now.
It is, but not for you guys yet, which is normal. As long as I've known you, BJ, Chiefs fans do not care about the NFL Draft until February, which is, enjoy it. You're blessed. I was actually telling my wife and kids, as you can see, I grew up a Niners fan, and I didn't see them have a losing season until I was like 20 years old. So it's like, enjoy it while you can. And you're on a special ride right now. So we'll talk draft stuff later for you guys. This is a good class for where the Chiefs have some needs, but right now those needs don't matter. I'm excited to see a road AFC Championship game for Patrick Mahomes and that crew.
And Patrick pretty well, and it's funny how much the storyline of Patrick Mahomes never playing a road playoff game, as if he's never played a big game with pressure in an environment like that. And at this point in his career, Matt, I don't know how you feel about it. I actually thought it was going to be a good thing that he goes on the road and just kind of gets that edge and that kind of, and Bills fans made it easy by throwing snowballs at him apparently throughout the game, especially after the game. But I thought it was actually a good thing for this group. They've got that championship pedigree. That was not one of the top 10 most important games that Patrick Mahomes has played in his career, or somewhere between 6 and 10. It wasn't a top 5 game for him going into that one, that he was able to feed off that energy in a way that was actually a positive thing, while a lot of people were trying to make it seem like, how's he going to respond? I'm like, I know exactly how he's going to respond.
Yeah. One of my favorite things, BJ, and I know you've worked around professional athletes for a long time as well, is that the general public is like, man, they don't care about that stuff. Like when the mayor of Cincinnati's going on Twitter and talking trash, or when they're renaming Arrowhead, Burrowhead, they're like, oh, the players don't care about that. They absolutely do. And for Patrick to even say, like, okay, no one's, he's got Bobby Stroop tweeting every negative thing said about him throughout the week, and he's getting a printout of that, or it's at least getting sent to his phone. So, yes, I used to say this about Tom Brady. Why would you give that man any needed ammunition? Like, why? Why would you write him off ever? And I think that's important. This week there hasn't been as much, I haven't seen it, at least. I haven't watched a ton of TV yet this week of as many people doubting. We'll see where we're at, Sunday morning. But I think that game at least quieted some of the critics. But I will say, I've been asked about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens a lot more this week on a national level than I've been asked about Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So I do think the big, 40,000 foot view from the national football media is that this could be Lamar Jackson's coronation, as opposed to Patrick Mahomes continuing to be Patrick Mahomes.
It was the same thing. And last week with Josh Allen, that was a legacy game for Josh Allen, and that regardless, and it sucks for him the way that it played out. Josh Allen played phenomenal in that game. He did not make mistakes that I said all week. Like, he's going to give you a couple opportunities to make some plays, because I felt like he was going to be so juiced up trying to prove that he's the alpha, that he's on that level. He's going to make a couple of mistakes, and to his credit, he didn't. But still, Chiefs were able to prevail. Now, in that game against the Bills, I want to get a couple thoughts on that before we look ahead to the Ravens, but as that game played out, what was the most surprising thing to you, I guess, going into that game, as far as how you thought it would play out, and then what we ended up seeing transpire between the Chiefs and Bills?
Yeah, I really thought early in the game, first half, I was surprised at the Chiefs' inability to stop the run, whether that was James Cook or Josh Allen. And I don't remember off the top of my head the exact rushing yards they gave up, so somebody's going to come at me and be like, they only gave up 48 yards rushing or something. But it was more like... I did the exact same thing in the same take, and somebody was like, they only had this yards per carry. Yeah, they got chunk plays with the extra offensive line. They did, and that's exactly what I mean. Is like the runs that they had felt impactful, and it was like just keeping the defense so unbalanced because they were having success running the ball. That was probably the biggest surprise to me. And then to see that, kind of change in the second half, I think is a credit to Spags and that defense. But early on, positives for Buffalo. I feel like Josh was just cooking. Like Joe Brady was calling a great game. They were in such a good rhythm, and they had Kansas City off balance. And I think we saw that at times. And then, the fake punt, it feels like everything changed on that fake punt. But I think positives for Kansas City, obviously getting Travis going, 2 touchdowns for Kelce. He's great. I think that bodes well coming into the week, going against a Baltimore team that is a ferocious defense. But then, the continued development of Rashee Rice into a number 1 receiver for this team the last 8 weeks has been fantastic to watch. And I think, like you said, Josh had to play mistake-free. So Patrick, he had to play mistake-free football. The Buffalo secondary, I'm going to say this is like a draft guy. The Buffalo secondary is not that good. So I kind of thought Patrick would have some opportunities. But, Baltimore is different. Baltimore is, I think, more physical, more disciplined, and it's a more complicated scheme.
Yeah, and both Miami and Buffalo were also banged up at the linebacker position where the Chiefs were able to exploit and kind of target some of those areas where Baltimore, not only are they not banged up in the middle of the defense, they're the best tandem of linebackers maybe across the NFL besides maybe your career.
I was going to jump all over you on that one, man. Fred Warner, Trey Greenlaw.
Best in the AFC.
Queen and Smith are, and I should probably say Roquan and Queen because Roquan's the dog there. I mean, it is a very, very good middle of the field defense. So that I know we'll jump into that too here.
Yeah, and going back, I love the chess match when you get into this time of the season. Nobody's holding anything back. They're going to game plan to wherever they think they have an advantage. And everybody made a big deal. Not that they didn't make plays. I'm talking Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. That's how the game was built. But yet when you look back at the game, what stood out about schematically what Buffalo did? They went 6 offensive linemen and ran the football early in that game to find a lot of success. Josh Allen completed 16 passes behind the line of scrimmage, which is the most in the next-gen stats era. Only completed 2 passes past the sticks. And yet he played a really good game. So I said the same thing on our show on Monday, and that Joe Brady should get a lot of credit for the way that he kind of managed Josh Allen in that game. And it didn't put him in situations where he may be tempted to do something he shouldn't. And then on the Chiefs side, yes, Isaiah Pacheco, Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, and Joe Tooney were phenomenal in that game. But from a schematic and just a game plan perspective, Chiefs ran 13 personnel more in that game than they have since dating back to 2016. So both teams going heavy with Chiefs with tight ends, Buffalo with the extra offensive linemen, and kind of not combating that Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen, but it ended up not being schematically what we thought we were going to see when that game started. And then, go ahead.
And I'll say real quick, because I tweeted this and you reminded me, Blake Bell's downfield blocking deserves so much credit. And I'm sure you guys gave him praise too, but it's not always about the receptions that he and Noah Gray have. It's about blocking out on the edge, or even, we've seen Patrick running, I think, a lot more as of late. Their ability to block down the field is truly amazing. And it keeps things really interesting when somebody's in the open field. So I just want to make sure I shout those guys out, because there were multiple times where I was that Sunday night, Saturday night, my whole week is a blur right now, where, Sunday night, where you're like, man, it just felt like Blake was making so many big plays away from the ball.
Yeah, and the other two, obviously the fake punt, which you mentioned being one of the biggest plays in the game, but for me, the 2 biggest plays, one on each side, and then the situation they overcame. I want to kind of wrap this up with thoughts on the Bills game and then talk Ravens, but, McCole Hardman's fumble, and it's not which one that he... Good point. Speaking of, I actually shout out Justin Watson, who took the ball away on the first fumble, because the guy for the Bills had that in his hands, and Justin Watson took it away. It was one of those just hidden plays that not a lot of people are going to give credit for that should. But it's not necessarily the McCole fumble and what that meant to the game. It's the way that the Chiefs on the road in a hostile environment, and it momentum completely shifting. And I saw the win probability for the Bills went from like 15% to like 40% on one play when McCole Hardman fumbled it. But the way the Chiefs responded, particularly on the defensive side, and kind of stepped up after that, that's the non-quantifiable, or you can't figure out. It's hard to put a finger on what a championship pedigree looks like. And to me, that's the example of fans and everyone just being like, oh, that's it. That's the dagger. That's the thing that we're going to be talking about that's going to kill us. And the reason that we're talking tomorrow about if he just wouldn't have done that. But instead, they overcame it and proved me wrong. And then I said, if the Chiefs lose the turnover battle, I think they'll lose the game. They didn't. But they stepped up.
Well, I think that surprised us all.
Yeah. Well, and then the other one was the George Karlaftis. His batted play on 3rd and 5 was I think at that time there had been 5 consecutive drives that led to lead changes. You're just back and forth, whoever's going to have the ball last. And then on 3rd and 5, George Karlaftis coming up free off the edge, which, without breaking down the entire play, knowing that Steve Spagnuolo has more free rushers coming than any other team in the NFL, he's very good at scheming this stuff up. George Karlaftis went and made a play in the biggest of moments.
Yeah, no, Karlaftis has been great all playoffs, and even in the weeks leading up to the playoffs, as has Charles Omenihu. I was a little surprised by some of the Chiefs' personnel. I think we saw more Mike Pennell than we've probably seen all year. I know you guys do the snap breakdown, but it felt like they were trying to combat that, heavy front the Bills were running. And so, especially early in the game, I was a little surprised by some of the personnel, but it worked. And, Spags, I heard him say this on the broadcast, which I'm not the biggest fan of the CBS broadcast, but I heard them say one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. I think this is NFL history. And, it's like when you look at what he did with the Giants, when you look at what he's done with the Chiefs, then he might have a case for that. He really might.
Yeah. And Mike Pennell, Derek Nottie being out with the injury probably propped Mike Pennell up a little bit. But I remember thinking with less than 4 minutes to go that Malik Herring was out on the field. And nothing against Malik Herring, but I was like, there's 4 minutes left to go in the game of the year. And, Malik Herring's out there. But to your point, it could have been to combat some of the stuff in the run game and try to put some more beef up there. But Matt, I want to talk with you about the matchup against the Ravens and the storylines and matchups that you're looking forward to watching play out. And we're going to talk with you about that right after this quick break.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
All right, welcome back to KCSN Update. BJ Kissel hanging out with ESPN's Matt Miller, the pride of Lamar, Missouri, residing in the huge city of Joplin.
I was going to say the big city now.
The best draft analyst to come out of the city of Joplin.
I will accept that compliment. Thank you.
Put the billboard up. Put the sign up.
Right.
Driving into town by the Blue Top Inn. All right, Matt, let's talk a little bit about Chiefs Ravens. And let's start on Chiefs defense versus the Ravens defense. Chiefs offense, Ravens defense. What in that matchup are you most looking forward to watching play out?
Yeah, I honestly want to see how much respect the Ravens play to Travis Kelce. I think if we had talked about this game last year, it would have been, how do you stop 87? Now, how much attention are you going to have to give to him? Is it Kyle Hamilton over the top with Roquan Smith underneath? Like, what do you do to take away 87? And, I'm a huge fan of Travis's. I think he's one or two greatest tight end of all time. His play this year has not been at a level where you would say, hey, we gotta take two all-pro defenders to stop this guy. So I'll be really curious to see what Mike McDonald does. Do you look at Travis and say, hey, like, it feels like everyone has played this team, the same way this year? Do you just say, we're gonna, put a body over the top and we're gonna kind of, almost play zone underneath? Like, what are they doing to take him away? Because you start to do that, and I think that's why we've seen Pacheco have so many early success running the ball games, because teams are still giving Travis that respect over the top without a speed receiver. That's what's crazy about this team right now, is there's not that over the top speed receiver. So teams can, pay that much more attention to 87. So I think MVS having the big catch down the sideline, Patrick Mahomes might be the greatest leader in the history of the NFL, because he keeps throwing that guy the ball after being let down so many times. I think that might, you're going into the week saying, okay, now maybe we do have to worry about that a little bit. But I think the chess match between Mike McDonald, DC of the Ravens, and how the Chiefs use Travis Kelce is what I'll really be focusing in on. Obviously, can you protect Mahomes? It sounds like Joe Tooney might be out as we're recording this. That's terrifying for the run game. But I think Kelce is still he's the guy you're circling in meetings all week. Okay, what are we doing with 87? And how much respect they show him will tell me a lot, at least, about where this game's going to go.
Yeah, and Joe Tooney looks like he's not going to be playing, and Nick Allegretti will step in. And the good thing is Nick Allegretti's played in some really big football games. He's got some experience, and he's also one of the Coach Reed will always call him like energy givers. And Nick Allegretti is one of those fired up, like he brings some juice with him out onto the field, which should be good. And I want to ask about the Ravens pass rush, because anytime we've ever seen any quarterback, it's not just Mahomes, any quarterback struggle, it's when you can get pressure with four. When you just win up front and dominate up front, every offense is going to struggle a little bit. In the matchup last week against the Bills, Ed Oliver, interior pass rusher for the Bills, had the most pressures for them this season. And Daquan Jones, who had missed some time with an injury, only played in 7 games, but he was their highest graded interior pass rusher for the Bills. Those two guys combined for 0 pressures against the Chiefs, because Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, And Joe Tooney, while he was in there, and then when Allegretti stepped in, had maybe their best game of the season. Those guys were absolutely phenomenal up front. Now you're going from Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver to the Ravens front. If the Ravens are going to, and they're good at every level, but what about that group up front for the Ravens potentially having the ability to just wreck a game? Who is the guy that you've got to account for up front with an offensive line that's proven to be able to do it? But what's that look like this week?
Yeah, I mean, you got to stop Justin Madubuike. Like, that's the guy. And I think this is a different Ravens team schematically, personnel-wise, from what we all kind of grew up expecting, like those great outside edge rushers. They're going to say edge rushers at 3-tech, and which is why I said it's kind of terrifying that Joe Tooney's going to be out, because Madubuike is, I mean, he could have been an all-pro this year. He was that talented, that dominant. He's just not a household name like an Aaron Donald or a Chris Jones, so it's not getting talked about that much, but he's the guy. Like, if I'm in defensive meetings this week, he's the guy in terms of the front four that I am very, very worried about, because the first step quickness is fantastic. He's got a ton of natural leverage, and his motor is just nonstop. It's go, go, go. So this is a team that has a ton of speed at linebacker. Jadeveon Clowney has kind of revitalized himself in this defense. We know how great he is against the run, but he's stepped up a lot more as a pass rusher as well. It's a very they've got a great mix of veterans with Kyle Van Noy, Clowney, but then they've got like the young dudes with Odafe Owe, who's got a ton of speed. So they're really, they can bring it in waves, I think, which is where you want to be. That's where every team's trying to be now. But it's I think more, and this is like how McDonald was in Michigan too. It's a team where you're fundamentally really sound, and you might have like a star, but the other 5 or 6 guys are just all, badasses who don't make mistakes. I think that's more where this team is, as opposed to like, you play Cleveland, it's like, okay, we got to worry about Myles Garrett. Yep. Like, no, with Baltimore, it's more you got to worry about the scheme and the versatility.
Yep, that's why it's going to be fun to watch. And Madubuike made himself some money this year as a free agent.
Good. In fact, did he?
As I'm wearing all juice in honor of Therese Paylor, contract year being undefeated, and Madubuike got himself paid. So he might not be a household name. He will be when people see that contract. All right, let's flip to the other side. Talk about the Ravens offense against the Chiefs defense. Where are the matchups you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, Mark Andrews will be back, so that will be interesting to see how healthy he is. I think Isaiah Likely's been fantastic in his absence. Like, that's a guy you have to worry about. I think the good news for Kansas City is, I think the strength of this team, I mean, it's strong all over. It's a great defense, but you've got really smart young players in the secondary. Justin Reed has really impressed me the last few weeks, kind of the veteran presence here, but how much I love L'Jarius Sneed and have for a long time. McDuffie's an all-pro for good reason. And so you're going to match up a huge advantage for Kansas City in the secondary over Baltimore's wide receivers. We saw last week, though, Lamar doesn't have to throw for a ton of yards to beat you. He does it with precision in the red zone. He does it with his legs. So I think the other good news is you've got speed at linebacker. Willie Gay is incredibly fast. We see, hopefully we get to see Willie Gay. Drew Tranquill is incredibly underrated for just how well he puts himself in the right position to make plays. And then, Nick Bolton, not the fastest linebacker in the NFL, but certainly one of the most instinctive and one of the smartest. So I actually like the matchup. Baltimore's run game is predicated on Lamar. So you're going to have to stop number 8. Like everything revolves around how do we stop number 8. No one has an answer for that. I'm not going to pretend to have the answer for that because, you can be Bill Polian and say, make him throw from the pocket. And he does what he did last week. So, you just got to hope Lamar makes a mistake. And I don't even know that you can, quote unquote, force him into those mistakes. You're kind of hoping that, he leaves the ball while he's running or something crazy like that happens because he is playing at an MVP level. And Houston's defense is not Kansas City's defense, but, he absolutely rocked them in the second half. So you got to bottle up Zay Flowers. I think Trent McDuffie can do that. You just got to tackle this team. Like that's honestly, it all goes back to that. Point number 1. You have to tackle this team because they're so damn good in space. Lamar is slippery. Zay's slippery. Just if you can tackle, I think you're going to win this game.
Yeah, and it brings a great point. And Lamar, I've never been a Lamar hater or doubter. I've doubted his ability to win 3 games in the playoffs against really good teams, having to complete 3 or 4 big-time third down throws. I just hadn't seen that from him. He hasn't proven that he can do that yet, but then the Ravens went out and got guys where he didn't have to complete a 12-yard pass down the field on third and
right.
He's to throw to Zay Flowers, who's going to have 5 yards of separation, 4 yards down the field. He's going to make one move, and he's going to pick up the run after the catch. He's going to pick up that first down, which I thought was brilliant with what the Ravens did this offseason, bringing in Zay Flowers, Odell, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, getting these guys who can go out and make plays. But for me, the matchup to watch, or what I think going to be the key of the game, are the two defensive ends for the Chiefs and how they, do the zone read and the RPO stuff and all the stuff that gets Lamar out in space. It's not real wide he likes to get. He's a slasher, wants to get up the field.
Yeah.
Can Nick Bolton, can Drew Tranquill, can Willie Gay fill the lanes, and can the defensive ends? And they can't line up and do it. They can't just scrape exchange every single time where linebacker comes around. You have to mix it up. Can they consistently bottle up or confuse the blocking assignments, the gaps, all this? I'm not going to pretend to know all the X's and O's, but I know going up against him that a lot's going to be on the defensive ends, because if that's who's being read, they need to be able to mix it up and do some different things. And that's why Spags gets all the credit he does for what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and I've been waiting to see more of Minihue and Jones playing inside together. This might be the week because you want range from your D tackles this week. This might be the time to have those two inside, and Karlaftis and Mike Dana on the outside. That might be the look I go with up front, because it's not that I don't respect Baltimore's running backs, but you're not game planning against, Dalvin Cook at this point in his career. You're not game planning against the running backs. You're game planning against the second effort run game. So Lamar's just dangerous. There's not you can be angry and old and say keep him in the pocket. He can't beat you, and he's going to prove you wrong. And I think by containing him, you don't want to give these wide receivers any extra time to get open, because they're going to do it. So if you have a rush plan of containment instead of attacking, gosh, it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't with how you defend this guy right now.
Yeah, and I think looking at the Bills game, one of the frustrating things, especially early in that game that you and I were talking about earlier, is Bills seemed like they were getting 7 and 8 yards on first down every time. So that by the time they even when they got to third down, it was very manageable kind of distance. Yeah. Again, with Lamar, not to be the old man obvious of create third and long situations, but don't let him run for 7 yards consistently on first down, and you're yourself in a much better position, and not have these 2nd and 2. That's the most terrifying down and distance for me, especially going up against Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. 2nd and 2, it's like, this is a play action shot play. If I've said when Zay Flowers can be wide open, there's nothing you can do about it.
Is this an appropriate time to mention how hard Brett Veach was trying to trade up to get Zay Flowers, or is this the wrong time?
I don't want to hear that. Zay Flowers, you know what? Many assets we had for Zay Flowers ready to go. We had interviewed him at the Shrine Bowl. We had highlight packages. Man. I was all excited, and then the dream just got...
It was going to be I mean, you got Rashee Rice, who's fantastic. Fantastic.
I feel like that meme where I'm like looking back at Zay and Rice, like, I'm the best.
It's not like you couldn't have had both of them.
Receiver in history.
Could have drafted both. So, I love Rashee. Rashee Rice is becoming a favorite player. I live with 3 Chiefs fans. They all, to the point that my son was like, "Is that Jerry Rice's son?" I was like, "No, he's just playing like it, but not his son."
He's gonna look awesome next to Marvin Harrison Jr. next year. They're gonna be a great tandem for.
I don't know how you're pulling that off. I don't know.
I trust in Veach. And speaking of Brett Veach, I want a chance to give flowers a little bit to Brett and what he's been able to do here, because I'm just looking at the PFF grades just for relative scores amongst each other. Look at some of the top guys. Obviously, Chris Jones being up there, but Trent McDuffie, Shamari Connor is the 3rd highest rated player as a rookie.
He steps up last.
Leo Chanel, Josh Williams, L'Jarius Sneed, Jalen Watson. Like, all these guys are late round, mid round draft picks that aren't just playing well, but they're playing phenomenal. Again, for a defense that, along with the Dallas Cowboys, depending upon yards, points per game, however you want to look at it, they were top 3 defense from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. It was the youngest defense in the NFL, talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. And that is a credit, not just to Steve Spagnuolo for being able to get these guys on the same page to run a complicated scheme, all kinds of blitz looks and the timing and the spacing, all that stuff being so important. But Brett Veach for bringing in that talent. Same thing on the offensive side. You just mentioned Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco being a 7th round pick, Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey, and the list goes on and on of the guys he's brought in here. I don't know if we give Andy Reid a lot of credit. We give Patrick Mahomes. There's so many people that need to get the credit that during the season, I don't feel like Brett Veach gets enough credit. And the only time he's discussed is why didn't they, when it was offensive, why didn't they bring in George Pickens? Why did they draft McColl over DK Metcalf? It's like that crap where you can do that for every draft pick ever made. I don't tell a draft guy that. But that stuff drives me crazy. Revisionist history drives me crazy when you're talking about this golden age of Chiefs football. And financially, they're set up well. Especially, this was a rebuilding year financially for the cap space. Like, they're set up to be able to attack and do some things this offseason. And yet they're still finding success in the interim because of the talent that Brett's brought in.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Andy gets a lot of credit. Patrick gets a lot of credit, deservedly so. But I do think it's, look at the team that's been built to be able to, I was just telling Bills fans this the other day, to be able to, we see a lot of teams, young quarterback, okay, we're going to load up to try to win now. And Buffalo fell short. Kansas City is a great example of how you do that, how you keep your stars around your young quarterback and win, and then transition to, all right, we got to start getting rid of some of these guys. We're going to retire out some guys. We're going to lose Eric Fisher. We're going to lose Mitchell Schwartz. We got to replace. We got to rebuild. We're going to lose, Trevarius Ward. We're going to lose Tyreek Hill. We got to rebuild, and build a shuffle from a Tyrann Mathieu to a Shamari Connor and be okay. Says a lot about, drafting for your profile, knowing your coordinators and what they want, and having the trust in each other to sit down in those meetings in March and April and say, all right, Spags, we're going to have to replace Chris Jones. That's a tall order, but I know what you like. I know what you need. Here are 5'6" defensive tackles that fit that profile, that are in our range where we can get in the draft. Watch these guys. Let's figure this out. I think they've done that well. And yeah, there are misses at wide receiver because of that, because I think they were trying to fit a profile a little too hard, especially early in Patrick's career. But Rashee Rice is fantastic. He was the best rookie wide receiver in the NFL. Fantastic pick. And I know we'll have more time to get into needs and the draft and things like that after the season ends. But it's an exciting time to see the way that they've set the table with a young, not just young because they're 23, 24 running around, but young because they're cheap. And that's the part, like, you hate to say it out loud, but like you need that. When you're paying your quarterback, you have to have that inexpensive labor. And this defense is, I need to pull it up when we're done talking. The offensive spending versus defensive spending in Kansas City would be really fun to look at, especially for next year, if you got a new D tackle in there.
Yeah, the wide receiver room took up $20 million in cap total. Tyreek Hill was like,
and a lot of that's MVS. So.
Yeah, he's $11 million. He's more than half of it. His cap space, I think his cap hits $11 million, and the Chiefs are like at 20 overall. But Matt, I am not going to let you go without a little draft talk. So give me 3 names you like for the Chiefs at pick number 32.
At 32.
Cisco at 31.
At 30. Oh, I will say, if it's Chiefs Niners again, we're gonna be together watching that game. Right. That's a promise. Okay.
Our Dak Prescott bet. I'm still.
I didn't remember this bet. What was our Dak Prescott bet?
They'd never win the NFC title with Cowboys.
Well, yeah, you're looking very right currently on that one. Okay, so at 32, now that we've run my credibility, I think that wide receiver is a big need. I will preface this by saying, we could see a left tackle, a defensive tackle, a corner, depending on what happens with Snead. Crossing my fingers that he's back with you guys because I love Snead. But 3 names at wide receiver that I think can realistically be there. Xavier Worthy from Texas. I think everybody who watches this knows I'm a Longhorn. Worthy is being slept on right now because he's like 175 pounds at 6'1", but I do think he's the best vertical stretch threat in the draft. Cleaned up some of his drop issues, played harder this past year, which was a knock on him. It just seems to have clicked. He understands how hard he has to work. He was bought in this year and thrived because of it. So he would be that answer to, Rashee Rice runs a 4.51. He's a really good player, but he runs a 4.51. You need somebody who can take the top off the defense. Xavier Worthy would be that dude. Devontae Walker from North Carolina. If we see that early run on wide receivers, Tez would be another really good fit. Somebody who's going to be, up the seam, to the sideline, vertical, very physical, great concentration in terms of hands, with traffic around him. Going from Kent State to North Carolina, he had to sit out early in the year, but he's fantastic as a downfield threat. Let's go one more. Xavier Legette from South Carolina. He'll be at the Senior Bowl. He's probably the best receiver that's going to be at the Senior Bowl. 6'3", 227. Incredibly physical. So not that vertical stretch guy, but if you want like the A.J. Brown type where like, hey, this dude's going to run a slant and then he's going to break tackles. No one's really going to want to F with him. He's got the ball in his hands. Like he can be kind of that dog that you need a little bit of. But again, this is going to be fascinating because we could be sitting here in the middle of April talking about defensive tackles instead, instead of wide receiver, depending on what happens. It's a very good free agent wide receiver class. It really is. It's a deep draft for wide receivers, offensive tackles, and corners, which is where I think you could maybe argue the Chiefs' 3 biggest needs are. So it'll be fun.
I love it. I would love it if we could start some rumors. We can start them on this show. Say some bad things about Matt Harrison Jr. Try to lower his profile a little bit.
It wouldn't matter.
Striking distance. Just get him within striking distance.
Yeah.
I'll put a basket.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't even know who I could recommend that you might trade to get higher in the draft. It's just it's not that kind of year where teams are going to be willing to move on. At the top, good news for you, he's probably going to the NFC. It's the way it looks right now. So you're not going to have to worry about seeing him a whole lot.
That's good. All right. Matt Miller from ESPN, man. We appreciate it. Make sure you're following Matt at NFL Draft Scout on social media and getting all of his coverage, getting ready for the NFL Draft here in just a few months. I know you've got the Senior Bowl coming up. We'll be down at the Shrine Bowl. We can exchange notes on what we see there. We got a handful of local guys. Jason Bean, KU quarterback, just announced that he'll be at the Shrine Bowl. So we'll be talking
That's awesome.
This week. Yeah. Matt, man, we appreciate it.
When you're there, BJ, real quick, Jatavian Sanders, Texas tight end. Tom, I said hello and spent some time there because this is my dream Chiefs 2nd round pick. Tight end, Jatavian Sanders. So.
We will talk with him and I will name drop. Matt Miller told me to talk to you.
All right.
So we appreciate it, man. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll have plenty more content getting you ready for Chiefs and Ravens. As always at KCSN, we appreciate your support. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without you guys listening, watching, and all that good stuff. So we appreciate you. Have a great week. Be kind. We'll see you next time.